Jacob was just an ordinary guy, living on a small farm on Earth. He had always loved the peaceful life, surrounded by fields of green and the sound of birds in the morning. But even in this peaceful world, his heart still carried the memories of the one event that had changed his life forever. Years ago, he had met someone out of this world, literally. Lyra, the alien princess, had appeared on Earth during a time of crisis. He had been part of a diplomatic mission that went horribly wrong. Lyra had saved him when things were falling apart, and in the process they had formed a bond that neither of them had expected. But just as quickly as she had arrived, she disappeared without a trace, leaving Jacob heartbroken and confused. He couldn't forget her. He couldn't forget the way she looked at him, the way her soft alien voice had comforted him during the darkest moments of his life. For years, Jacob tried to move on, but a part of him always wondered what had happened to her. Why did she leave? Was it because of their different worlds? Or was there something more? Had so many questions, but no answers. It was just another ordinary day when everything changed. Ashika. Jacob was working on the farm, repairing a broken fence. The sun was shining, and there was a gentle breeze. The peaceful silence of the countryside was broken only by the sound of his hammer hitting the nail. But then, something strange happened. The sky above him suddenly grew dark, as if a storm was approaching. Jacob looked up, squinting against the sunlight. But what he saw wasn't a storm. It was a massive ship, glowing with strange lights descending from the sky. His heart skipped a beat. It was her. The ship landed softly, the ground trembling as it touched down.
Ow.
Jacob felt a rush of emotions flood through him. He didn't know whether to run, to hide, or to wait. He stood frozen, staring at the massive vessel before him. The doors opened slowly, and a figure stepped out. His heart raced as he recognized her. It was Lyra. She looked just as he remembered, tall, graceful, and beautiful. Her soft, otherworldly beauty was still there, and her eyes, deep and full of emotion, locked onto his. She was still the same, but there was something different about her now. Her presence felt more powerful, more urgent. "I missed you so much, human," Lyra said, her voice carrying across the field, making Jacob's heart race. "Let's go back." Jacob stood still, unable to speak. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. What was she doing here? Why was she back after all this time? He had tried so hard to forget her, to move on, but now, everything he thought he knew was being turned upside down. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the wind rustling through the trees. Finally, Jacob found his voice. "Why did you leave?" he asked, his words shaky, but full of the pain that had been building up for years. Lyra's expression softened. She stepped closer, her alien presence filling the air around them. "I had to. There was a war, and my people needed me. But I never forgot you. I never wanted to leave you." Her words were sincere. But Jacob couldn't help but feel a pang of bitterness. He had spent years wondering why she disappeared, and now she was back, offering no real explanation. "I don't know what to say," Jacob replied, his voice hoarse. "I never expected you to come back. I moved on with my life. I thought, I thought you were just a dream." Lyra's eyes softened, and she reached out to touch his arm. "I know it's a lot to take in, but I'm here now, and I need your help." Jacob was confused. "Help? With what? You left, and now you're asking for my help? After all this time?" Lyra nodded. "I didn't want to leave you, but I didn't have a choice. Now I do. I've come back because my people are in danger. I need you, Jacob. You're part of something bigger than both of us." Jacob felt his heart race. What did she mean? What was going on? I don't understand. What's so important about me? I'm just a human. What could I possibly do for you or your people? Lyra's gaze turned serious. "You are part of an ancient prophecy, Jacob. Your fate has always been tied to mine. I didn't come back for just any reason. I came because the galaxy needs you." Jacob's mind was spinning. Prophecy. Him. He couldn't believe it. All sounded too strange, too impossible. He was just an ordinary man, living a simple life. There was no way he could be part of something that grand. "I don't even know what to say to that," Jacob said, shaking his head. I'm not some hero, Lyra. I don't even know where to start. Lyra smiled softly. You don't have to say anything. Just come with me. I'll explain everything. We don't have much time. The war is already starting. Jacob looked at her, his heart still unsure, but there was something in her eyes that made him want to trust her. He had spent so many years wondering what had happened to her, and now here she was, asking for his help. He couldn't just turn away. Maybe, just maybe, this was his chance to be part of something bigger, something he had never even dreamed of. I'll go, Jacob said finally, his voice firm. I'll help you, but you owe me an explanation. I want to know everything. Lyra nodded. I promise you will. Come with me, Jacob. Together, we can change everything. As they walked toward the ship, Jacob couldn't help but wonder what the future held. He had no idea what he was getting into, but one thing was clear. His life was about to change forever. Ask ChatGPT. The days that followed were a whirlwind for Jacob. He had never imagined that his quiet life on Earth would suddenly turn into something so extraordinary. Lyra had taken him to her ship, a vessel unlike anything Jacob had ever seen. It wasn't just advanced. It was beautiful, full of soft lights and smooth metallic surfaces that seemed to hum with energy. The inside of the ship was quiet, except for the occasional hum of machinery and the soft sound of footsteps as Lyra led him through narrow corridors. The ship, Lyra explained, was capable of traveling across galaxies, a feat humanity hadn't even dreamed of yet. The technology was centuries ahead of what Earth had. But it wasn't just the ship that amazed Jacob. It was Lyra herself, her beauty, her grace, and the calm way she spoke of things that were far beyond his understanding. She had told him that she was a princess, the heir to a mighty civilization on a distant planet. Her world had once been peaceful, but now it was on the brink of destruction as they traveled through space. Lyra spoke of the war that had been threatening her people for years. The enemy was a ruthless faction from another part of the galaxy, a group of conquerors who had swept through several worlds, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. Lyra's people had fought back, but they were losing. And now, Lyra believed that Jacob, the human she had once shared an unexpected bond with, was the key to saving her world at first. Jacob didn't know what to think. He was just a farmer, an ordinary human. How could he possibly be connected to an alien prophecy? How could he help in a war between alien species? But Lyra's words stayed with him, and soon Jacob began to realize that there was more to his life than he had ever imagined. The feeling of being chosen, of being part of something much bigger, strange but powerful. We don't have much time, Lyra said one evening, as they stood together in the observation deck of the ship. Looking out at the stars, my people are running out of hope. They're looking to me for leadership, but they also need you. Jacob turned to face her, his mind racing. What exactly is this prophecy? Keep saying that I'm part of it, but you've never explained what it means. Lyra sighed, her expression softening. The prophecy speaks of a time when an outsider, someone from another world, will arrive and change the fate of my people. That outsider will bring the strength and courage needed to defeat the conquerors who threaten our home. And that outsider, Jacob, is you. Jacob's heart beat faster as the weight of her words sank in. I don't understand. I'm just a regular guy. I'm not some warrior. I don't even know how to fight. Lyra smiled gently. You don't need to fight in the way you think. The prophecy isn't about physical strength. It's about the power of unity. It's about bringing together the different races of the galaxy and showing them that we can stand together against a common enemy. Your strength, Jacob, is your ability to bring people together, to inspire them. Jacob shook his head still. Unsure? But I don't know anything about your world. I don't know anything about your people. How can I possibly lead them? You've already shown me the kind of leader you are, Lyra said softly. When I first met you, you were scared, just like me. But you stood by me when no one else did. You trusted me when it would have been easier to run. That's the kind of leader my people need. Someone who isn't afraid to do what's right, even when it's difficult. Jacob looked out at the stars, his mind whirling. He hadn't thought of himself as a leader. In fact, he had always avoided attention, preferring the solitude of his farm. But now, he was being asked to lead an entire civilization. The weight of it was heavy, and he wasn't sure if he could live up to the expectations. "What happens if I can't do this?" Jacob asked quietly. "What happens if I fail?" Lyra's voice was steady. "You won't fail. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you. My people are desperate, Jacob. They need someone who believes in them, someone who can show them that they're not alone in this fight, and that someone is you." Jacob was silent for a long moment. Da-da-da. Vastness of space stretched out before him, and the silence was both comforting and overwhelming. He had never thought his life would lead him to this moment, to this galaxy, this war, and this prophecy. But here he was, standing beside the woman he had once lost, not asking for his help. "Okay," he said finally, his voice steady. "I'll do it. I'll help you. I'll help your people." Lyra's eyes lit up with gratitude. "Thank you, Jacob. You don't know what this means to me." But despite his decision, doubt lingered in Jacob's heart. He didn't know what he was getting into, and he didn't know if he was truly ready for the responsibility. Was he really the one who could save an entire world? He was just a human. He wasn't a hero, and he wasn't a soldier. But for Lyra, he would try. He had no choice now. Over the next few days, Jacob learned more about Lyra's world and the dire situation they faced. Her people, though advanced, were outmatched by their enemies, who had technology even more powerful than theirs. The war was spreading, and many worlds had already fallen. Lyra's planet was the last bastion of resistance. If they fell, the entire galaxy could fall with them. Jacob didn't know how he could possibly help, but as the ship hurtled through space toward Lyra's world, he made a promise to himself. He would try. For her people, and for the chance to make a real difference. He may have been an ordinary man, but maybe that was enough. Maybe that was exactly what they needed. The journey to Lyra's home planet was longer than Jacob had expected. Every day, the ship traveled faster than anything he could have imagined. The stars outside the windows blurred into lines of light, and Jacob spent his time trying to understand the world he was about to enter. His mind was filled with questions, doubts, and a growing sense of unease. He had never thought of himself as a leader, and yet here he was, on his way to a world at war, carrying the hopes of an entire civilization. As they traveled, Lyra shared more about her people and their struggles. Her world was a beautiful place, full of towering cities, lush forests, and oceans that stretched as far as the eye could see. But that beauty was under threat. The Conquerors, a ruthless race from the edge of the galaxy, had begun their campaign to take over Lyra's planet. They had destroyed other worlds before, leaving nothing behind but ruins and broken people. Now, Lyra's people were fighting back, but they were losing. Jacob couldn't understand why they had come to him for help. He was just a human, living a simple life on Earth. How could he possibly make a difference in a war like this? He had no skills in combat, no knowledge of intergalactic politics, and no idea how to lead an army of aliens. But Lyra had insisted that he was the key to everything. The prophecy said he would be the one to unite their people, to bring them the strength and hope they so desperately needed. "I don't know if I can do this, Lyra," Jacob said one evening, as they sat together. On the observation deck of the ship, the stars outside twinkled like diamonds, but Jacob's mind was heavy with doubt. "I'm not a leader. I'm just a guy who used to work on a farm." Lyra turned to him, her eyes soft but firm. "You're more than that, Jacob. You've always been more than that. You just don't see it yet." "But I'm not like you," Jacob replied. "You're a princess, a ruler. You've been trained your whole life to lead. I've never done anything like this before." Lyra reached out and placed her hand on his. "It's exactly why you are the one. You're not bound by the rules and expectations of my world. You bring something fresh, something my people desperately need hope." Jacob shook his head, still unsure. "Hope? How can I give them hope when I don't even know what I'm doing?" "You don't have to have all the answers," Lyra said. "You just have to believe that you can make a difference." "Right. My people are dying, Jacob. They're losing faith, and that's why they need you. You can show them that they're not alone. You can show them that even in the darkest times, there's always a chance for victory." Jacob didn't know if he was ready to believe that. His life had been simple, predictable, and now everything was changing. He couldn't just walk away from the life he had known. He couldn't ignore the responsibility that was being placed on him, but he couldn't ignore Lyra either. She had been there for him when no one else was. Now it was his turn to be there for her. As they continued their journey, Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. He had always been a skeptic, never one to believe in prophecies or fate. But the more he learned about Lyra's world, the more he realized that this wasn't just about him. It was about the survival of an entire civilization. If he didn't help, if he didn't step up, Lyra's people might not survive. He couldn't live with that. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the ship arrived in Lyra's home system. The planet came into view, a beautiful blue and green orb suspended in the darkness of space. Jacob's heart raced. He had seen pictures of the planet before, but nothing could compare to seeing it in person. It was like looking at a jewel in the vastness of the universe. But as they drew closer, Jacob could see the scars of the war. Smoke rose from the cities below, and the once beautiful land was now marred by the devastation of battle. Jacob's stomach tightened. He had promised Lyra that he would help, but now that he was here, he wasn't so sure. Could he really do this? Could he really lead a people he barely knew into a war they might lose? The weight of the decision pressed down on him like 1,000 tons. Lyra, sensing his unease, stood beside him. "I know it's a lot to take in, Jacob, but you're not alone in this. I'll be with you every step of the way." Jacob looked at her, his heart torn. He had spent so long trying to forget her, trying to move on with his life. But now that she was here, standing beside him, asking for his help, he couldn't say no. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that his life would never be the same again. "I'll do it," Jacob said, his voice steady, but filled with uncertainty. "I'll help you. I'll help your people." Lyra smiled, relief washing over her face. "Thank you, Jacob. You have no idea how much this means to me." Jacob nodded, but inside, his mind was still racing. He didn't know what the future held, or if he was even capable of leading an entire civilization. But one thing was certain, he was in this now. There was no turning back. Whatever came next, he would face it with Lyra by his side. As the ship began its descent toward the planet below, Jacob couldn't help but feel the weight of the decision he had made. He had chosen to step into the unknown, to fight for a world that wasn't his own. But in that moment, with Lyra's hand on his, he felt a sense of purpose that he had never felt before. The war was coming, and Jacob was ready to do whatever it took to make sure that they didn't lose. He had made his decision. All he had to do was live up to it. Ask ChatGPT. As the ship descended through the atmosphere of Lyra's home planet, Jacob couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and fear. The planet, once so beautiful from space, now looked like a war zone. The cities below were half destroyed, and the skies were filled with smoke. But even in the midst of this chaos, there was still something undeniably magnificent about the world. Lyra's world. The ship landed softly in a clearing near a large, ruined city. Jacob could hear the distant sounds of battle, but they weren't as close as he had feared. Lyra had explained that her people had built strong defenses, but the enemy had been relentless. Jacob's heart sank as he saw the wreckage around them, the signs of a long and brutal war. As they exited the ship, Lyra led him to a group of soldiers waiting to greet them. They were a mix of aliens, all wearing armor that gleamed under the harsh light of the setting sun. Despite their impressive appearance, their faces were filled with exhaustion, their eyes dull from endless fighting. Jacob felt a pang of sympathy. These people had been fighting for so long, and they had no idea if it would ever end. "We'll take you to the council," Lyra said quietly, her voice filled with determination.
Oh.
"The queen is waiting for us." Jacob nodded, but couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As they walked toward the main palace, he couldn't help but feel that he was being watched. He turned his head, but all he saw were soldiers and civilians going about there. Business as usual. Still, the sense of unease remained. The palace was massive, a grand structure made of shining metal and glass, surrounded by a huge courtyard. Jacob had never seen anything like it. It was a symbol of the power and wealth Lyra's people had once held. But now it looked like it was barely holding together. The once pristine walls had cracks, and many of the windows were shattered. The grand entrance had been blocked off, replaced by a simple, hastily built path that led them into the heart of the building. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The air was thick with the scent of burning metal and dust. Jacob's footsteps echoed as he followed Lyra through the long corridors, her face set in a determined expression. They reached a large chamber at the center of the palace, where the council of leaders waited for them. The council members were a diverse group of beings, each representing different races from across the planet. Some were tall and muscular, while others were smaller and more delicate. All of them wore similar expressions, a mix of worry, exhaustion, and fear. Jacob felt out of place, but he stood beside Lyra, trying to look confident, even though his mind was racing. At the head of the council table sat Queen Vera, Lyra's mother, and the ruler of the planet. She was a tall, regal figure, with silver hair that flowed around her shoulders like liquid metal. Her piercing eyes scanned Jacob as he stepped forward, and for a moment, Jacob felt as if he were under a microscope. There was no warmth in her gaze, only cold calculation. Lyra stepped forward. "Mother, this is Jacob. He is the one the prophecy spoke of. He has come to help us." Queen Vera didn't respond immediately. She simply studied Jacob with a stern, disapproving gaze. "I see," she said finally, her voice low and commanding. "And you believe that this human, this outsider, is the key to our survival?" Jacob could feel the weight of the queen's gaze pressing down on him. He wasn't sure what to say. He didn't feel like the answer to her people's problems. He was just a man, a human, who had somehow found himself in the middle of an alien war. But he knew he had to try. "I don't know if I'm the answer," Jacob said slowly, "but I'm here to help. I can't promise that I have all the answers, but I'll do what I can." The queen's eyes narrowed. "You will do what you can, yes. But you must understand, human, that your presence here is not welcome by all of my people. Some believe that your kind is nothing more than a distraction, a foolish hope that will only lead to our doom." Jacob felt a knot form in his stomach. He had expected resistance, but the queen's words were harsh. She was clearly skeptical of him, and it seemed that not everyone was ready to accept him as the key to their salvation. "I understand," Jacob said, trying to remain calm. "I'm not asking you to put all your trust in me. I'm just asking for a chance to prove that we can work together. I'm not your enemy." Queen Vera's expression softened, but only slightly. "We shall see. For now, you are here. You will meet with our generals and assist with the defense of the planet. Your role will be to support our efforts, not to lead them." Jacob nodded, relieved that the queen hadn't dismissed him outright. "I'll do whatever I can," he said. But as they left the council chamber, Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that things were more complicated than he had realized. Queen Vera might have reluctantly accepted him, but it was clear that she didn't trust him. And from the looks of the other council members, he wasn't sure that they did either. Lyra walked beside him, her expression unreadable.
"Oh."
"Don't worry," she said quietly. "They'll come around. You just need to prove yourself." But Jacob wasn't so sure. There was something in the air, something unspoken. As they walked through the corridors of the palace, Jacob caught glimpses of soldiers whispering to each other, their eyes flickering with uncertainty. It was clear that not everyone was ready to embrace him, and Jacob wasn't sure how he could change their minds. He had promised Lyra that he would help, but now, as he faced the reality of the situation, he wondered if he was really up to the task. The enemy was closing in, and time was running out. Jacob had to figure out what his role really was, and fast. He couldn't afford to fail, not when so many lives depended on him. Something told him that the real battle was only just beginning. And it wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a battle for trust, for hope, and for the future of a world that had already been scarred by war. Ask ChatGPT. Jacob felt the weight of the queen's words hanging over him like a storm cloud. Queen Vera's cold gaze had been piercing, and it was clear that she didn't trust him. Jacob had known that his journey here wouldn't be easy, but this level of skepticism was harder to ignore. As Lyra led him out of the council chamber, the silence between them grew heavier. "Don't take it personally," Lyra said after a while, her voice soft but steady. "My mother is ... protective. She's seen a lot of loss, and it makes her distrust outsiders. But she'll come around. She has to." Jacob wanted to believe her, but it was difficult. He could see the pressure in Lyra's eyes, too. Her people were in danger, and she needed their queen's support. But the queen's attitude made him wonder if this battle for survival could ever truly be won with so much division. They spent the next few hours moving through the palace, meeting with generals and strategists, all of whom treated Jacob with polite skepticism. The soldiers were busy preparing for the next battle. They moved swiftly, focused on their mission, but there was an undeniable tension in the air. Everyone seemed to be waiting for something, waiting for an answer, for a sign of hope. As night fell, Jacob was shown to his quarters. It was a small room compared to the grand palace, but it was comfortable enough. He sat by the window, looking out at the night sky. The planet was beautiful, even in its wounded state. He could see the soft glow of the city lights barely visible against the dark horizon. It reminded him of the home he had left behind. He missed Earth. He missed the quiet simplicity of his farm. The way things had been before all this madness began, but he couldn't go back. Not now. There was a knock at the door, and Jacob turned to see Lyra standing in the doorway. "May I come in?" she asked. "Of course," Jacob replied, stepping aside. Lyra entered the room, her expression serious but warm. "I wanted to check on you," she said. "I know the council didn't make you feel welcome, but you can't let that shake you." "I'm not shaken," Jacob said, though he couldn't help but feel a knot in his stomach. "It's just hard to be here, to be part of something so ... big. And the queen. She doesn't seem to want my help," Lyra sighed, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "She doesn't trust easily. And she's not the only one. Many of my people have been through too much. They've lost so much already. They're afraid of putting their faith in someone they don't know. But you've proven yourself before, Jacob. You've saved me once. That has to count for something." "I don't feel like I've proven anything yet," Jacob said quietly. "Still just trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do? I'm not a warrior. I don't know how to lead anyone." "You don't have to lead them in the way you think," Lyra replied. "You lead with your heart. You've already shown that you care about my people. Yep, you care about us. And that's what matters the most right now." Jacob nodded slowly. He wanted to believe her. He truly did. But the queen's anger and the council's doubt weighed on him. How could he help when no one was willing to give him a chance? The next day, the council called another meeting. This time, the atmosphere was different. There was a palpable sense of urgency in the air. The enemy was approaching, and the final battle was drawing near. Lyra and Jacob were led to the war room, where the generals were gathered around a large holographic map of the planet. Lyra's mother, Queen Vera, stood at the head of the table. Her eyes were hard, and her face was set in determination. "We have only one chance left to win this war," she said, her voice cold and commanding. "The enemy is closing in, and our defenses are failing. If we do not act now, our entire civilization will be wiped out." Jacob's heart raced as he took in the scene. He wasn't sure how much help he could be, but he had promised Lyra that he would try. This was his moment to prove himself, even if he wasn't sure how to do it. "We need new tactics," one of the generals said, his voice tense. "Our forces are too spread out. We need to focus on one point of attack, one place where we can make our stand." "Agreed," another general chimed in. "But we also need fresh eyes. We need someone who can think outside the box, someone who isn't weighed down by old tactics. Perhaps the human can help us here." Jacob's eyes widened at the mention of him. Queen Vera turned her gaze toward him, her expression unreadable. "You think a human will help us?" she asked, her voice like ice. "You think he will have the answers we need?" The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Jacob. He could feel the weight of their expectations on him, but he didn't know if he had the answers. His hands were sweating, and his mind was racing. How could he make them see that he was more than just a symbol of hope? How could he prove to them that he had the strength to lead, even if he didn't feel ready. "I may not have the answers," Jacob began, his voice steady despite the doubt, swirling in his chest, "but I know that no matter how much we fight, we can't win this war by ourselves. We need to come together, all of us, humans, aliens, everyone. If we don't unite, we'll all fall." There was a moment of silence before Queen Vera spoke again, her voice soft but firm. "You think unity is the answer?" "I do," Jacob said. "When we're together, we're stronger. You have to believe in that, no matter how hard it gets." The Queen didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked at him. For a long moment, her gaze cold but thoughtful. Then, finally, she nodded. "Double quotes, very well," she said. "We will try it your way. But know this, human, if you fail, it will be your head on the chopping block, not mine." Jacob didn't flinch. "I'll do my best," he said. "I won't let you down." Battle was coming, and Jacob had just made his first real step toward becoming a leader. But he knew the real challenge was just beginning. It wasn't just about fighting the enemy. It was about proving that, even in the darkest moments, hope could still be found, and that perhaps unity was their greatest weapon. The war had reached its peak. The enemy was closing in, and Lyra's people were running out of time. The once beautiful planet was now a battleground, and every corner of the city was filled with the sounds of battle. But even in the midst of chaos, Jacob felt a strange sense of calm. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. It's the moment where he could make a real difference. After the meeting with the Queen and generals, Jacob spent the night thinking. It promised to help, to unite the various factions of Lyra's people, but how could he do that when so many were still divided? How could he convince them that unity was the answer when they had been fighting for so long with no end in sight? He was no soldier. He had never been trained in the ways of war. Strength was in his ability to connect with people, to show them that there was more to life than survival. But was that enough? The enemy wasn't just another threat. It was an unstoppable force that had already crushed so many worlds. And now it was coming for Lyra's. Jacob walked through the palace. Hallways, lost in thought, when Lyra found him. She was walking toward him, her face calm but filled with the same determination that had always been in her eyes. Her presence, even now, was a comfort to him. She had been his anchor through all of this, and he knew that he had to do his best. For her people, and for the future of their worlds. "You look lost in thought," Lyra said, her voice gentle. Jacob smiled faintly. "I guess I am. I'm trying to figure out what we can do next." Lyra stepped closer, her hand resting on his arm. "You've done more than enough, Jacob. You've already shown them that they're not alone. They believe in you now, but it's time for the final push." Jacob looked at her, unsure. "But I still don't know if I can do this. The enemy is so strong, and my people, my kind, aren't prepared for this. I've never faced something like this before. I'm just ... a man." Lyra's expression softened, and she stepped closer, her voice low. "You're more than just a man. You are the one who has brought us all together, who showed us what hope really is. And that ... that is the most powerful weapon we have." Jacob took a deep breath. "I wish I believed that. I really do. I can't help but feel that I'm not ready. I'm not the leader they think I am." "Maybe you're not," Lyra said, her eyes steady. "But you're the leader we need. Sometimes the right person doesn't feel ready. But they rise to the occasion, and they do what needs to be done." Jacob looked out at the stars through the palace window, his heart heavy. The sky was so beautiful, yet it felt like the calm. Before a storm, he had come so far, and now the final decision was upon him. The enemy was waiting, and Lyra's people were waiting. He had to choose, was he willing to risk everything to fight to unite these people, or would he turn away and let them fall? "What if we lose?" Jacob asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if I fail? What if I can't do what I promised?" Lyra was silent for a moment before she answered. "If we lose together. But we will not give up without fighting. We may not be able to change the future, Jacob, but we can choose how we face it. And that choice, that courage to keep going when everything seems impossible, that's what will define us." Jacob turned to face her, his heart finally starting to understand. "And if we win, Lyra said, her voice firm. With conviction, we show the galaxy that no matter how dark it gets, there is always a chance to rise again, and that will change everything. Jacob nodded. He didn't have all the answers, but one thing was clear. The only way forward was through this battle. No matter how impossible it seemed, no matter how scared he was, he had to face it. He couldn't let Lyra and her people down. And he couldn't let himself down? "I'll do it," Jacob said, his voice firm now. "I'll lead them. We'll fight together." Lyra smiled, her eyes full of pride. That's all I needed to hear. The final battle was set. The enemy had begun its advance, and the time for talk was over. It was time for action. The next morning, Jacob stood before Lyra's people, the leaders of the different races that made up her civilization. The palace was filled with tension, but there was also something else: hope. They had seen Jacob stand by them, stand beside Lyra, and they had seen that he was not like the others. He wasn't a soldier, but he had the courage to lead. That was what they needed now. Jacob stood tall, his voice steady as he addressed them all. "I don't know if I'm the leader you wanted or the one you expected, but I'm the one who is here, and I promise you this: I will fight beside you. We will fight for each other, for our homes, and for our future. This enemy might be strong, but together we are stronger." His words were simple, but they resonated with the people before him. He wasn't offering grand promises or empty words. He was offering himself. And that was enough. As the battle began, Jacob found himself at the front lines, not as a soldier, but as a symbol of hope. The fighting was fierce, but as the sun set over the battlefield, Jacob knew that the choice he had made was the right one. They had fought with everything they had, and now it was up to the future to decide. But for the first time, Jacob felt ready. No matter what happened next, they had united, and that was the greatest victory of all.